Hello everyone, my name is Kiva and I teach people how to achieve the luxe look for less. In today's video, we're talking about 5 times being cheap ruins your interior design. I know you guys, I'm all about the luxe look for less, but in these instances, you need to splurge. Before we get into today's video though, please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and check me out on Instagram. And if you want me to design your home, click the link in the description box for my virtual design sessions. Let's get into today's video. The first category I want to talk about today is paint. So not all paint is created equal, and I have learned that the hard way. Learn from my mistakes, and every single thing I'm talking about in today's video are things that I've wasted my own money on. When it comes to paint, sometimes you're like, oh, I just want to go pick it up at Home Depot. I just want to go pick it up at Lowe's. I want to get the paint that I can get really quickly and that's super cheap, because paint does get expensive. If you're painting a whole home or a couple of rooms, paint can cost upwards of $500, and that's being pretty conservative. Normally the paint that you can go into the hardware store and just pick up isn't of great quality because it's $15, $20, and maybe even if it is a good quality, you need so many gallons of it to get the same finish as all the other stuff that you actually end up spending the same amount of money. When I like to choose paint, there are 2 brands that I really truly stand behind, and I'm going to tell you about them today. So my number 1 favorite paint brand is Benjamin Moore. Benjamin Moore paint has absolutely never disappointed me, and all tiers of their paint has not disappointed me. The inclination is always get the cheapest paint. Oh, it can't be better than the other one. Why would they sell it if it's so bad? Well, they sell it because you're going to buy it and you're going to come back and you're going to come back again. They've just played you. You are playing yourself. Again, when it comes to Benjamin Moore paint though, all of their tiers are actually phenomenal. I've used their paint in my bathrooms, in my guest rooms, all throughout my home, and all of the tiers are really phenomenal. Another paint brand that I do enjoy to some extent is Sherwin-Williams. And I'm going to speak about Sherwin-Williams because most of you actually have greater access to Sherwin-Williams. When it comes to their lowest tier of paint, I'll be honest, I don't think it's very good. When we moved into our home, the contractors actually used the lowest grade of Sherwin-Williams paint, and it has chipped off the walls. It looks horrendous. At this point, we're going to have the house repainted. That being said, Sherwin-Williams actually has an emerald level of paint, and it is pretty expensive. It can be about $50 to $60 a gallon, but the quality is there. We've used it for touch-ups, we've used it in other rooms in our house, and when painters actually come to our home, that's the paint that they choose to use. A tip that I want to give you is if you're hiring a painter, you're not doing the painting yourself, you want to make sure that even if they have a contract with a company, that they're getting the highest tier of paint. Sometimes you may want to actually go buy the paint yourself to make sure you get something of quality so that they aren't like ripping you off. I'm not saying that all painters do that, but I'm all about giving you all of the information. So with Sherwin-Williams, I like the emerald level of paint, but they also have an interior designer level of paint that is also fabulous. They probably won't tell you about it because it's really expensive, but they tend to have tons of coupons. So just look for those and maybe splurge for that. It's not also just about the paint. You also have to think about your paint tools. Okay, so you know me, I can't stay out of the Dollar Tree, all right? I acknowledge this, it's my vice. So they have paint brushes and paint buckets and all that stuff. Well, they're really nice for your little DIY projects, but no ma'am, you cannot paint your entire house with a Dollar Tree roller because it's just gonna split in half. You're gonna be rolling up the wall and it's gonna split and you're just gonna have paint all over your face. I know this because it has happened to me. Now, I think this is actually going to be the most controversial point of the day, and I'm really, really excited to make it. So something that people cheap out on all of the time is white glove delivery. You guys remember that episode of Friends where Ross wants his couch, but he doesn't actually want to pay for the delivery, so he makes Rachel carry it from the store to the home, and they can't get it up, and he's like, pivot, whatever. I don't need to reenact the entire Friends saga for you. You can go watch it. But that happens to people all of the time. Now, not all things require white glove delivery. If you have small chairs or small tables, of course, put them in the back of your car with a tarp and bring them home. But when you cheap out on white glove delivery, you run the risk of 2 things. 1, you gotta bring them home yourself, which means if you drop them, if you're not that strong, if you don't secure them all in the car, they're gonna get dirty and they're gonna get messed up. Speaking from experience, my wife and I decided that we wanted to move some sofas around, and not only did the entire back of the sofa end up looking like the color of dirt, we also put a huge hole in our wall because we did not have the expertise to do it correctly. And we move stuff all the time. This is literally something, this is before I did this for a living. I do want to say that, but it has happened, and it happens to the best of us. We all think, oh, we don't want to spend that extra money, but then we mess things up. And this huge thing that we spent a long time purchasing, we invested in it, it all goes to waste because we get it dirty, we ruin it, or something like that. The other thing that happens when you don't spring for that white glove delivery is that you tend to have to assemble things yourself. Just think about it. We've all seen the IKEA directions before. You're like, what are you telling me to do? You can't figure out what to do, and they say you can call and ask us, but they're not going to pick up the phone. They're not going to help you do it. So you run the risk of actually assembling something incorrectly. There's nothing worse than paying $2,000 for a sofa, you're sitting on it having a nice time, and then suddenly you're on the floor or you're on the inside of the sofa and you're experiencing the parts of the sofa that you were never meant to actually experience. It's happened to us all. You want to make sure that things are assembled correctly, and when you're paying for that white glove delivery, I want to say 8 out of 10 times it also comes with assembly. So paying that extra $200 or $300 is something that you should consider doing. I know you don't want to pay the money, you already got to pay the taxes, but don't cheap out on that. It actually is so valuable a lot of the times. So the next thing people cheap out on all the time is the tape measure. I know you're like, Kiva, what? It's a tape measure. IKEA has tape measures, the Dollar Tree has tape measures, Family Dollar has tape measures, the supermarket has tape measures. There's so many different places to buy tape measures, but again, not all are created equal. A lot of the cheap tape measures, they will maybe go to 10 feet, 12 feet, but how many people have houses that are just 12 feet long? The answer is pretty much nobody, unless you live in a smaller apartment, which is totally fine, nothing wrong with that. But you need a longer tape measure, but a lot of times people are like, oh, I don't want to splurge for this, because this can be $25, $15, and people are like, oh, you know what, I'm just gonna wing it. I'm just gonna use my feet to measure. I'm just gonna use the ruler I had from 3rd grade to measure. I mean, you've seen people walking across the room like, okay, 1 foot and 2 foot and 3 feet. You have no idea. When you don't have your space measured correctly, you make mistakes with your layout and with the scale of your furniture. We've all seen the house. If you've been on my channel, you've all seen those homes where the sofa takes up the entire walkway. Or, you know, they have a table that is the size of the sun, but the chairs are actually doll size. You know, people make these really silly mistakes, and they happen because you don't measure correctly. And the best way to measure correctly is to use the correct tools. This is a nice fancy tape measure here, and it is rigid. So when I extend it here, it doesn't bend in the same way. So I have one from IKEA. Maybe I'll try and stop talking because it's gonna interfere with my microphone. So here, look at this example here. As you can see, I'm trying to manipulate it and it's not moving. It actually takes a lot of force and effort to manipulate the tape measure. Cheap ones actually, they move all about and all that good stuff, so the measurement is not always accurate because you can't get a straight line against your baseboard or your wall or whatever it is you're trying to measure. Something else that really distinguishes a good tape measure from a cheap one is, one second, the lock on it. So the lock is such an important part of a tape measure because if you can't lock something in place, you don't know if the measurement is correct. You know, I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. If you don't have a very good starting place, you don't know that your endpoint is the correct endpoint. And if you're measuring by yourself, this is critical because you're gonna get it messed up. I invest in these. These are the things that I use when I go into client projects. You can't always rely on the contractor measurements, the layouts that you receive, all that good stuff. It's not always accurate. There's so many things that happen as you are building a home where things get tweaked a little bit and they don't change the plans, right? It's tedious. They're not going to do that. So you have to go measure it yourself and you have to make sure those measurements are accurate. As you're seeing throughout these videos, all of these cheap shortcuts that you're actually making cost you more money in the long term. Something else people cheap out on all the time is the bar stool or the counter stool. And I know you're like, look, I just sit there to, you know, eat my breakfast or whatever it is. So I understand why you cheap out on them. They're really expensive. Bar stools can be $300, $400, $500. And I'm like, ma'am, what if I sat on the floor? I really feel like that all the time. But when it comes to a kitchen, a standard kitchen, the bar stool or the counter stool is really the only thing that brings your design style into the kitchen. Because a lot of the time you don't have space for decor. You actually need to put your dishes somewhere or your cutlery somewhere. So you don't have a place for all of these vases and garland and all the stuff you see in the designer homes. So if you want to carry your design style into your kitchen, the real only way to do that is with your bar stool or your counter stool. Now, I hear you. A lot of the times people get the quintessential bar stool that they have in Walmart and Target. They're comfortable, they work, but if you weigh over 150 pounds, you might end up on the floor, and they're not going to hold up long term. And they also scratch your floor. So those are 3 reasons right there why you shouldn't get that. I know the inclination is like, I just moved into my house. I just want something comfortable. I feel you on that. I feel you on that. But borrow something from your mom, your dad, a different family member for the time being, and save up and get something good to begin with. Because otherwise your kitchen feels really disjointed from the rest of your home, especially if you have an open concept. I'm telling you, it's gonna take a few extra $100. It's gonna take a little bit more time to find something that works, but it also allows you to really decide on your design style, which is something you wanna do from day one, if possible, in your home. Because when you're buying things that don't work for one design style, you have an amalgamation of things that don't work together, and at the end of the day, you just end up wasting so much money. The next item that you should never ever cheap out on is the faux flower. So you might be saying, why would I buy fake flowers? Just buy real flowers. Okay, if you feel that way, please just skip through this part of the video. A lot of people don't have a green thumb. They don't want to take care of flowers. That's fine. This is a no judgment zone. When you cheap out on the faux flowers, they look really fake. The point of the faux flower is to try and make it look real-ish. Real-ish. We're not trying to say, oh, it's the same thing, because that actually ends up costing the same amount as buying the real flower. So it's actually better to just buy the real flower all the time, throw them out every week, and then go to Trader Joe's and buy them again. For example, this chestnut branch from Crate & Barrel, I think was like $25 or something like that. It was not cheap, but it has so much detail. It looks like there's actual bark. You can't see any exposed wire. There are differences in the color. There is tons of texture and color on the actual flower itself. There's the detail. It's the level of detail that you actually need in a real flower. Now, we've all been to the Dollar Tree and they have the flowers. So those flowers are great if you're building a flower wall or something like that, but they absolutely never look real. And you want to get something that looks similar to real, because if it doesn't look real at all, then don't even buy them, because it actually devalues the entire vignette you've constructed. It makes everything look cheap. So spend a few more dollars and get something that will last for years to come. Nothing falls off. I've never had one of these fall off. We see that with faux flowers all the time. You'll look at it and like 10 petals fall off and you're like, what's going on here? You're not real. Why are your petals falling off? Now, something else I like to do is, if you don't want to get a faux flower, get something that has been dried, right? That also costs a little bit more money, because it once was real. They had to dry it out and preserve it and all of that. But here is an example here. This is also from Crate & Barrel. There is so much detail. It was once real, so it adds the texture and color and dimension that you look for with flowers, but there is no maintenance here, right? Because it's already lived, it's reached the end of its life, and now its only job is to look good. So yeah, this one was $15 for this bunch. I feel like that's fairly good. Another tip I have that I use all the time is buy faux flowers that look like flowers that don't look real in the first place. For example, olive trees and olive branches, they have very, very white undersides to their actual like leaves, right? So they're really light on the back and then they're very green on the front. That is what actual olive trees look like. So when you get faux olive branches, they actually look more real as compared to other faux plants, because the white backing is something that they do anyway for faux plants. So you're like, oh, okay, like this makes sense. This is maybe what they would naturally look like. Another way to make your faux flowers actually look a little bit more real is to buy more of them. Again, we want to be cheap. We just want to buy 2 or 3 of them. If you buy 6 or 7 or 8, you can create an arrangement that's very full, so you can't see all of the details that make it look fake, like the little plastic or the little wire. If it's overfilled, you can't see those details and it looks more real. The next thing you shouldn't cheap out on is your bedding. So I like to try all different types of bedding. I am your resource for that. And I've tried cheap bedding and it's been good. And I've tried really expensive bedding and it's been good. But on the whole, you do want to invest in your bedding, because that's where you sleep every single day. I don't know about you, but when I went to college, I got these 100% polyester sheets, right? Because they were what Target was selling. So I got these sheets, and every day I got into bed, it felt like sandpaper against my skin. I will say it helped me get up earlier in the morning because I was so uncomfortable in my bed. But in general, you don't really want that. That is not a practice we want to have. You want sheets that make you feel comfortable. You want sheets that are nice and soft and comfy, so that you're able to get a good night's rest, because sleep is super important. Buying high quality sheets also prevents pilling. Pilling is the bane of my existence. I think it looks so tacky, because it does. It does. When you see pilling on someone's clothes or on a sofa, it just shows that something has so much wear and tear and the maintenance isn't happening. Something else that makes bedding worth splurging on is that more expensive bedding tends to have a little bit more temperature control. And that means that you're not going to burn alive in your sheets. Has that happened to you? That's happened to me before. I feel like I'm having a hot flash, but I'm 20, you know, or I'm 24. I feel like I'm having a hot flash and I'm like, I'm not at that part of life yet. I'm not ready for that. When it comes to bedding, I love the Wamsutta. You guys know this, but they're kind of phasing that out. I love Italic. Again, Italic actually uses the same manufacturer as Wamsutta, so Italic is phenomenal. I really like their linen sheets. I think those are the two brands that I would recommend the most, but they're good sheets across the board. West Elm sheets are good. Those are a little expensive for me, but just do your research and invest in something that's going to hold up for the test of time. The very last item that you should always splurge on is your sofa, and splurge is relative, right? You know me, I'm all about living within your means. So if you don't have it in the cards to splurge on a sofa right now, that's totally fine. No judgment from me here. But when it comes to a sofa, it's important to splurge on it because it's somewhere that you sit all the time. So in the places that you sit constantly, you should spend a little bit more money on it because it has to hold up to your use. When we bought our sofas, I'll be honest, our sofas are not that expensive because we don't sit on our sofas. We are very much so we love to sit at the dining table. We love to sit in bed. That's where we just like to sit. So we spend a lot of money on our bed. Anyway, we didn't spend that much money on the sofas because we know that we don't sit over there. But if we did, we would have to buy something that is made of a better fabric because due to the rub count or the abrasion, all of her clothes, all of the dog's clothes, all of that, it's going to rub against it and actually taint the color of the furniture. Something else that happens when you don't invest in a good sofa is that you don't actually have really good inserts or the good cushions of the sofa. So if you sit on the sofa over and over and over again in the exact same spot as most of us do, you're gonna get that little divot in there. Have you ever seen a sofa that looks like a crater, like a meteor hit it and it formed a crater and you're like, ugh, this is my sofa. People see this looks horrible. And it's not about other people and how they think, it's actually about how you feel when you're looking at the sofa, right? It just doesn't look as good as you would like it to look. Splurging on a sofa is also worthwhile to do if you have kids or pets because spending a few extra dollars will make the difference between having a performance fabric and not. And I've been going on and on about performance fabrics recently. A performance fabric is basically a fabric where you can pour anything on it, you can rub up against it, and nothing's gonna happen. You know what? Let's do a tutorial. As you guys can see, I took the coffee and I just let it sit there and it just rolls along the surface. You see? It's not going into the fabric. Even if I lift it up, it goes onto the paper. The paper is not a performance paper, but there's nothing happening to the fabric. And then I just wanna wipe it up. I'm gonna get my paper towel and you can see it all came out. And when I flip it over, there's nothing. Sorry, my nail came off. Don't look that. But it looks seamless. You can't even feel anything. When you're buying anything, you always have to think about the upfront cost versus the cost over time. Sit down and do the math. I'm telling you, when my wife and I decided whether or not we were going to get a hybrid or a normal car, we sat down and did the math and we were like, if we drive X amount of miles over this course of time, this is how much money we'll save on gas in this car versus this one. I'm telling you, sit down and do the math for all of your furniture. It's going to be worthwhile and you'll know, okay, I'm not going to splurge. I'll buy a new sofa every 2 years versus, okay, I'll spend, maybe $3,500 or $4,000 on a sofa right now, and I can keep this sofa for 10 years. Okay, guys, that's it for today's video. Those were 5 instances in which you should not be cheap. You're taking these interior design shortcuts and they're biting you in the butt. Have you taken any of these shortcuts? How did that play out? Let's chat about it down in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and check me out on Instagram. And again, if you want me to design your home, click the link in my description box for my virtual design sessions. And until next time, have a beautiful day.